Hey everyone, welcome to the Incubator Podcast. I'm your co-host Darren Boyd.
And this is Satbir Sran. Thanks for joining. So today we are joined by TJ Walia, founder and CEO of ZenTek Solutions. Now, what's unique about TJ is what we're going to unpack today in terms of a theme of productivity. So we all in this modern era are multitaskers, or at least we think of ourselves as extreme multitaskers, and either highly productive or not productive at all, but we're doing a lot of things in this, proverbial rat race that we're in. So we thought we would bring in TJ, who is a expert, if you will, in productivity. He is evangelizing different pathways to improve ourselves, both personally as well as professionally, leveraging various tools and technologies to help us in that process. So TJ, welcome to the show here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, gentlemen.
All right. So TJ, I know I gave a background, a snippet of who you are. If you wouldn't mind sharing with us a little bit more about who is TJ Walia and what led you to, focus on productivity.
That might be a really long episode if you want to get into all the details, but I'll keep it short. I've had an interesting career. I spent, I think, second year university when I got pulled out by Microsoft. So I started working for them, went through various different roles, but I was working at full speed, Satbir, through those days. As we do in university, you're hustling, you're getting all your courses done, exams, prep, all of that. That momentum just carried on with me because that's the only way I knew. And a few years into that journey at Microsoft, I actually hit a wall, like directly. I was going full speed, and we were at a customer meeting. We had I think about 6 of our customer members at this restaurant. And within moments, I had no idea what was happening, but it almost felt like, and I don't know if some of your audience will recall this, but there's a scene in Iron Man 3 when he's in the restaurant and that kid comes in for an autograph or something, and then he just kind of pushes him away and runs outside. And he tells Jarvis to check his vitals and see what's going on. That was the exact moment that I experienced, and I had no idea what was happening. And Jarvis comes up to him and says, you've just had a panic attack. But for me, it went so severe that I actually blacked out. I fainted. And once I came back to my senses, I had to go to the hospital, get the testing done, see what's going on. I didn't have a Jarvis in my back pocket that would actually do all that for me. So I had to actually go in. And everything came out clean. Like, there's no issues with your health reports, medical, everything checks out. So they sent me home. Over the span of the next few days and weeks and months, I kept on having these episodes come in, not to the point where I fainted, but enough to say something's not right. And there would be, emergency visits to the hospital and all. Long story short, through that discovery, I realized that what had happened was that I was, again, having severe panic attacks more than anything else. And it was due to the lack of productivity. So I was constantly on, constantly working, not sleeping enough, anywhere from, I would say, 4 to 5 hours per night, if that. And you're just constantly going with the family as well. So once I realized that's what the problem was, I went really full force into it and said, I have to tackle how I work, my work ethic, my behavior, everything from end to end. And I reassessed everything, going to the gym, waking up at 5:30 now to do this, because that was the only time I had. So yes, there was lack of sleep, but I had to find other ways to really fix myself. And being deliberate about my sleep schedule, sleep habits, number of hours I slept. And if there were nights there I didn't get enough sleep, I would make sure I take a nap during the day. So there's a lot of science behind, what happened there and how I got out of it. Funny enough, within 6 months of figuring myself out and my new way of doing things, I got promoted. And then I was scratching my head and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I've deliberately been doing less work at work, right? And how am I getting promoted through all of this? Once I started analyzing what was happening, I was actually doing meaningful work. I started ignoring everything that was noise. I started ignoring all the other requests that were coming in that did not impact my core business and my role. And I only did the things that mattered, which was a lot less than everything combined. So hence me getting promoted and getting the bonuses that I was well deserving of, I guess, in that case. But it was because I was doing direct, immediate work. From there, I started sharing what I learned with my peers. I saw them going through the same thing, and I didn't want anyone else being on that floor, on that restaurant, just like how I was. And that recovery, I made it sound so easy that, I started going to the gym, meditating, yoga, all of that was a huge burden. It's probably the darkest time of my life for myself and my family, given what I went through. And so I didn't want that happening to anyone else, and I still don't. So I started teaching my peers at Microsoft, and ultimately, my training that I did outside of my core day-to-day offerings or work, I ended up touching about 7,000 plus lives at Microsoft, where we actually showed them and taught them how to live a better life. And then once, in 2023, I decided that there was an opportunity for me to really continue this because I was really passionate about this. I started to leave. I decided to leave my career at Microsoft. Heck of a decision, very difficult to make. I still get questions today of folks at Microsoft and saying, "How the hell did you pull that off after so many years? Like, what do you have to do? What's your mental framework around that? What's your mindset?" So many different components. And I said, I had a bigger calling essentially. So I founded a company called ZenTek, and ZenTek, the name, if you think about it, I grew up in tech and I chose tech, but the Zen component chose me because of the happenings. And so I combined the name to call the company ZenTek. And now I'm going back and working with organizations like Microsoft, Intel, and the likes of others, where I'm helping them with work-life balance, productivity, enhancing individual lives through technology and using that to really be more productive. So that's essentially how I got here. And that's been my journey in a nutshell.
Yeah, an incredible topic area, and we're thankful to have you on. First of all, I think
Thank you.
this is something that I'm sure across industries is pretty prevalent. It seems like there's this collective stress that's just increasing globally. But I also remark, even before we get started, something you said was really, really fascinating. It's almost it's the engineer's approach to this, where you were wonderfully introspective to determine what was happening with yourself, to go through this process of identifying what is taking place here with me. But a lot of people, it's almost like Heisenberg. How do you evaluate this thing that you're a part of? Can you walk us through how do you help folks even recognize that they're going through something? Because oftentimes we call it the grind. We have whatever moniker we want to attach to something to make it seem like it's normal, it's okay, it's whatever. And it's really hard to separate yourself sometimes to go down the exact journey you went down. How can you give advice to someone to allow them to start to introspect in a similar fashion, to identify that maybe they are in this burnout window and they should make some changes?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is monitor your own behavior. We all know how we are. Are we always, frustrated? Are we agitated very easily? Right? Are we trying to constantly make ends meet? You're rushing from work to pick up the kids and then off to the next errand to the next. What does that life look like for you? Is it constantly go, go, go? And if it is, then maybe it's time to pause and really reflect on what you're doing, and is it sustainable? And that's the biggest thing, because I was doing the same thing and I thought, you know what, I'm great. I'm working at Microsoft, an amazing career, everything's going well. And for me, sadly, I had no other signs of it. I never thought about it, never watched any YouTube videos about self-help in this kind of aspect. I wasn't aware of it until I hit the wall, and I was forced to be aware of it. That was my challenge. And for me to go deeper into it, I have a computer science background, so every time there's a bug in our code, you have to find root cause. So for me, it was like, I understand there's a bug somewhere within me, and I need to figure out what that is and what's causing this behavior. So luckily for me, I have that computer science background where we were taught to troubleshoot in certain ways. Not everyone has that background, understands that same logical approach to solving problems. So I think my advice on that front is really look at those around you. Are your relationships, getting further away from you? Are they coming closer? What's happening? Where is your time being spent? And is that how you want it? A lot of people I do speak to, Darren, end up saying, they're focused on their family and trying to, but they don't have enough time for them. That in itself is a problem, right? If you're doing everything for your family and for your loved ones, but you're not there for them, then what's the point? Is it not time to change things up? Because we all know it. And, those who have kids recognize it even faster, that life goes by really fast. Like I can't even tell you how fast my kids have, grown up and how fast all that's happened. But I made a deliberate decision to be at home with them. So I started working from home early in my career, even before all this COVID stuff. I've been working from home for, I would say, about 12, 13 years now. Actually, probably longer now, 14 years, probably 15. And the aspect of being there for your family, and that's what's most rewarding for me through that journey. So that's how I can assess all that. But I was never home through a lot of those days as well, because client meetings, customer meetings, back to back, whatever have you, even though we weren't at a designated office per se, there were components of it. But I had the belief of, hey, I work from home, so I can be at home whenever I need to be. So there's things that we have to dig through and understand and say, is that really working from home? Or is that your home office, but your kids are not home, you're not home, and those connections out there, and after hours, you're either catching up on email, finishing up on the things that you're supposed to do, because a lot of the road warriors, the people that travel, well, they have to catch up on those emails and those communications at some point. And they're usually traveling, they're on the road during the day, right? So it's really assessing all of that and understanding, is that what I want, or should I be making some changes?
Yeah, a lot you said there, TJ, especially when we talk about, I'll say many of us that worked from or started working from home as a result of COVID. And what you often hear is people are working more. And I don't know necessarily if it's necessarily equating to the productivity aspect of things, but there is a lot more. It's just started earlier in the day because you avoided a commute, and you're constantly churning. And while everyone is around you, but that workload perhaps has increased, or we've placed it on ourselves. Not sure that's made any real difference in terms of quality of work-life balance. If you really take a step back in a way and look at it. In fact, we have gotten busier or more into, the grind. It feels as such. So how do you actually extrapolate your one self from that? And as you said, take a moment to pause and reflect. But then there seems to be not enough hours in the day to say, oh, well, I don't know what else to do, but to go right back to what I was doing, which is work and attend to those, emails, whether you're a road warrior or not. So how do you grapple with a solution besides, okay, I will work out, I will do X, Y, Z? How do you really make that mind shift into saying, I can be more productive and I can do this, and put some real boundaries around it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there, Satbir, to unfold there and unpack on. I think one of them, yes, we saved a lot of time by not commuting anymore, but that meant we were in the office more, we're working more. In office, I mean home office. What that did is it actually made things worse for a lot of people, because now there was no lines. Everything was blurred. So you're working in the kitchen. I know friends of mine that would take their laptop in the kitchen, they'd sit there in their work, they'd take it to the bedroom, they'll work from there. And all of a sudden, the entire home became your office, per se, or your work. So a lot of folks made that mistake, myself included. And then I became deliberate about it and said, this is not working again. I'm feeling some sort of pressure again, where it's not as comfortable as it needs to be, or this doesn't feel like home anymore. So I started creating borders, if you will. So my laptop did not leave my home office. It stayed in the office. It stayed there. Anything I had to get done happened there. Outside of that, it was my home. It was not my workplace. Any meetings I had to take, any calls, anything like that, happened in the office itself. So there's a lot of aspects that we have to look at. And when those lines got blurred, a lot of people just got even more busier, because now they couldn't let go. Historically, you had to actually get out, go to work, disconnect for a little bit, right? Leave your phone aside, you're driving, you're taking the public transportation, whatever have you. There was at least a half an hour to an hour, depending on where you are, of disconnect commute time. We eliminated that. Now it's just work all day long, essentially. And people really lost those borders and those parameters of where I should be working and where I shouldn't be. And it impacted a lot of relationships as well, because I know people that have had impact with both, husband and wife, or both partners working at home, and now it's like everyone's in each other's face, and all they're talking about is work, work, work. So those parameters are really, really difficult, I think. The other aspect I think you touched on was I had a thought about it, and it's kind of slipped now. You talked about something. What was it you said, Satbir?
We're talking about like how do you grapple with it once you recognize it, right? As you said, everything
Yeah.
bleeds over. So you recognize and you say, okay, here may or may not be the root cause. And there's certain things you can take, but how do you really get things done to be more productive by putting some of those borders around it or boundaries?
That's right. So yeah, so that aspect, I think, and one of the tools I really leverage is our calendar. It's a simple tool. It's not even a productivity tool, I would say. It's a calendar. A lot of us try to do multitasking. Like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And that's when you get into that mess of, I didn't get this completed, I didn't get that completed, I still have that pending, and you're in that rat race. When you have everything marked down in your calendar, it makes things so much easier to see, because you can only have one appointment at any given time. You can be in one place at any given time. So you make it so that you're not double booked, you're not triple booked, it's one block, and that's it. If something else comes in, you assess the priority levels, and you basically move the other item along or push it out. This includes your personal time. If you're going to be at the gym, make sure your calendar is blocked and nothing else takes that spot. And then at least you motivate yourself and say, hey, listen, I've got to go to the gym. Let me pick myself up and go take that time, because I've blocked the time off. I don't have anything else. The other aspect, now it's come back to me, the other aspect you spoke about, that we sit around and we say, I have nothing else to do, so I might as well go check on email. It's a big problem that we've gotten into. If you think about the part of the world that you and I come from, and our ancestors come from, so there, meditation was a huge, huge component of our daily lives. And that meant sitting still, quiet, on your own.
Mm-hmm.
We think that is not the way to do things anymore. We have to constantly be active. You constantly have to be doing things. And I tell my kids now, my daughter's 10. She's the one that gets most agitated. My older one's 14. The youngest is 4. But she's like, Dad, I'm bored. I'm like, good. So do nothing.
Yeah.
She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, do nothing for once. Get into the habit of doing absolutely nothing. It's incredible what happens. After about 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes of her doing nothing, she starts doodling and drawing these creative things that she doesn't do. And now she's gotten into art because of that. And she enjoys it so much. You start discovering yourself of what you really enjoy. And that doing nothing also for me is, you're not watching mindless TV or YouTube, right? You're not going to sit on any devices. It is literally, you're doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, there's there's so much of this that wow, I'm in violation of the but I love everything you've talked about. We've talked a lot about meditation, and I tell them, no, there's no way I can do it. Like literally, there's no way I can do it. My mind is going to go where it goes, and if I try and focus, it makes it harder for me. But so we've gone down that path. But this idea of addition by subtraction, or maybe focus by subtraction, is really, really interesting, because we all know the things we're supposed to do. Like, for example, for anybody that's actually physically come to this podcast, behind us is a jiu-jitsu gym. It's where I train, and Satbir does jiu-jitsu as well. And but if I'm going to miss an evening class, my only option is to do a morning class. Well, the morning class is now additive. It removes more time from sleep. So if I feel like I need to prioritize my exercise, I feel like I have to take away from something. And so I often take away from sleep. That's the discretionary bucket I've allocated. I never think to take away from the workday. I never think to take away from family. So it's, hey, if I want something for me, I've got to take it from somewhere. That's the only place to take it. And what'll happen is I may feel great in the moment, but boy, when 11, 12 o'clock happens, I am just dead. So how do maybe you can now start to walk us through, as you touched those lives, and you've been doing this for a while now, how do you approach that class, that lesson? Where do you start? How do you start thinking about a curriculum to express to these people? Because I imagine a lot of them will connect right away on some of these messages, but it then gets to, Satbir, I don't know how to sit there quietly. My brain won't allow it. And so we joke about it and then we move on. How do you really help people with some of your courses and programs?
Absolutely. And those are great questions there, Darren. I think a lot of us struggle with that, especially in this part of the world. Like I grew up in Toronto, right? So for me, it was not any different than for anyone else that's growing up in this environment because it's the same chaotic environment that we're living day to day in, essentially. And the aspect that really worked for me, so I couldn't do the meditation stuff. I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, I can't sit still. My mind has gone through 50 different things. I have to get this for the kid's birthday, and I have to do that. All of that happens to me as well. So don't think you're alone on this. But the one aspect that I found that worked really well is that I used to think meditation had to be done in a certain way that some teacher tells you how to do, and that's the only way it gets done. We're far, far, far as wrong as can be from that. What I found that worked for me, which is also meditation in a way, is watching the littlest things that you can just focus your attention on without having other thoughts. For example, watching an ant colony being built. They're just doing their own little thing. You just watch them and observe what they're doing without your thoughts won't go anywhere else. If you're focused on the ants, one little ant taking that one little grain to wherever he's going and just walking that path, as simple as that, that is what really got me started. I had someone actually tell me that, and they shared it, and they're like, it doesn't have to be in the way that it's written in the book. You have to sit still, and you have to do this, and you have to breathe in this way. It's like, do what works for you. And then from that, I went in, and if you've ever looked at a leaf very closely, you'll see these little veins on it. Just look at those veins, follow them through, see where they're going, how they're connected, all that, just a little detail. Even a minute of that, Darren, made a drastic difference. And then from there, you start, okay, understanding, hey, the mind can be silent and it can sit still. But there's nothing to say that the thoughts will not come. They will. It's just you start deflecting them and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to focus here, and this is where the focus is, not on the other thing.
I really like that, by the way.
So I think it's the concept of mindfulness and then and awareness, self-awareness, right, about yourself that you can appreciate by focusing your attention on the most simplistic of aspect of things, and like you said, putting some boundaries around or calendar block and really focusing that. So in this age of where everything is teaching us to multitask, add on everything, I think the core takeaway is not to multitask, and really focus on doing a single task at a time, but doing it really well.
Absolutely.
Which would increase your productivity or effectiveness for that task, versus doing 10 tasks half-ass, right? And
Absolutely.
And thereby kind of cluttering your mind. So, personally speaking, I would say the last from COVID and outside of just being in the profession that we are in, last in, first out, it's all a clutter of dealing with clients and requests and things of that nature, is that things have become very disorienting in the sense of there's so much going on. So it is hard to focus on doing one thing really well. And it's kind of like retraining your brain, because this whole past couple of years has, at least for myself, has trained in a counter pattern. And to grapple with that. So yeah, it's the little things, to your point, the calendar, that can start making a difference. Now, you also spend your time in other ways from a technology standpoint as well, in terms of coaching and training. So does your curriculum evolve from kind of like at least getting recognition, self-awareness, these little tasks? Where can you expand more on where you go and help organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Darren, you'd asked, what does that curriculum look like and how do I start it? One of the first things I do is a 1 minute of meditation. And you'd be surprised how many people have never sat still for 1 minute. They're like, this was really awkward, like silence in a meeting room, nothing happening. And they're just like, this is awkward. So I start with that. And then depending on the group I'm working with, it's really about using now the tools that they have at their disposal. Outlook was the one I started with, Microsoft Outlook. We were at Microsoft, everyone used Outlook, and most corporations still continue to use Outlook. And The reality is most people, when they're working with email, only leverage the forward, the reply, or the delete. Beyond that, or new email as well. Let me not not forget that. Beyond that, how much more do they really use in the tools themselves? So one thing I started doing was really understanding what are all the different settings, components, options that are available to me. How can I make my life better? And this is what I did after I hit burnout, just to understand, is there any automation I can do? And I started with rules within that aspect of it. And a lot of people don't use the rules. They expect everything just land there, like I'll just figure it out, because they don't know how to use the rules. And one of the things that one of my biggest pet peeves is organizations will hand you an inbox and say, here's your role, deal with it. But no organization ever teaches you how to manage that inbox. They'll never go in and say, this is how your day to day should look like, and this is what you should be doing. It's no, this is what your job is, this is what your function is, go do it. Right? So I go through understanding what each organization's day-to-day objectives are, what they're trying to accomplish. That gives me a sense of what their priorities are. So I even say things like, ignoring your boss's boss's boss. Like, why is that even relevant? Because the communication coming in from an individual at that level is usually organizational wide or department wide, and it says, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. It's never, you need to make this immediate change right now, and this is how you should be working. So it never affects your day-to-day activity in that moment. But majority of us will stop right there and start looking at that email that came in from the head boss. I used to tell people as well, even at Microsoft, I'm like, the email coming in from Satya does not impact me, because it really doesn't. That is more forward-looking. It's a vision statement. It is the direction of the organization. That's not going to impact my conversation that I'm having with the client in 30 minutes. And this is where people make the mistake. And then they scramble, and then they half-ass that meeting with that client because they were too busy reading that email from Satya, which they thought everyone on the around the water cooler was talking about. I never got involved in those conversations. I would hear from them like, oh, do you see the email from Satya? I'm like, no, I haven't. It's in my folder. I'll look at it when I need to, but I haven't looked at it yet. So it's being deliberate about where we focus our attention, because just because everyone else is focusing on that email from the president doesn't mean you should be as well. So little things like that, and being deliberate. Like I said, it's where's your attention going? And at the end of the day, I'm the one that's relaxed, and all these people are still chaotic and running around like, what just happened? Where did my day go? Well, your day went into that email from that person that you shouldn't have been reading it from, or that Calvin Klein, newsletter that just came out that there's a sale going on, and you spend 30 minutes shopping around that during business hours. This is why you're doing things after hours. If you focus just on business during business hours, chances are you don't have to do anything after hours.
Yeah, I really like that, because I don't know if it's FOMO, but if people are talking, then I should be in this conversation as well, and that gets interesting. And I guess another question, I love productivity hacks, but I often get wrapped up in them. And for example, for a very long time, and I found some success with it, but I couldn't keep it up. I was subscribing to GTD, getting things done, and inbox zero, and all of these techniques. And I found while I was in it, I got reasonably proficient, and I felt more productive. But the moment I fell out of it, even for a week, the stress seemed to compound. But it is interesting, because there are many great tools, and you're right. If you learn to use them better, then there's a semblance of control you can potentially bring back in. But at the end of the day, it's still so hard not to get overwhelmed with eking out the absolute degree of performance that you feel you have to in order to make all these commitments. How much of this is doing just that, making us the most performant while balancing some semblance of mental health? And how much of that is acknowledging that maybe this degree of performance isn't something that we have to aspire to? Because I really like when you said you consciously kind of stepped away from some of these communications, some of these areas of focus. It did something different to you. But for me, I would still walk around saying, hey, if people are chattering, I have to know what's going on. I don't want to be left out. So how do we kind of reconcile some of those concepts What do you do with it?
Yeah, I think again, it's self-awareness, Darren. I think it comes down to what do we want. For me, I learned a really hard lesson the hard way, right? So for me, it's like I don't want to be in that spot again. So it was easier for me because of the lesson I had learned. For someone who hasn't experienced it, it's a little bit more difficult. It's like, oh well, I need to be in that cool conversation that's happening over there. We'll find out about that conversation, that gossip, regardless. But that's the same spot where company politics starts. So I don't go and get involved over there anyways, right? Because then it's like, well, that person's in. Who knows if I was a part of those politics? I probably was. Where, well, he doesn't care about those guys, their emails. So, I wonder how his career is going to be and this and that. So all of that happens regardless. But I think it really comes down to recognizing what you want for yourself. I think that's self-identification first. Excuse me. If you know what you want out of your career, out of your journey, out of your life, and you can be clear about that, that is the first step. So one of the activities I have my students do is identify their top 3 stakeholders. That's it. I don't care about the 4th, 5th, or 6th. The top 3 that they're constantly engaged with, the top 3 that really matter, the top 3 that if they get ticked off, that they can get fired, right? That is all I care about. So let's now find out, how do you cater everything you do towards those 3? Everything else is noise, essentially, but we rank what that noise looks like. Some of it's important, some of it's relevant, some of it not important, but the primary aspect is let's focus on what those 3 stakeholders are. Outside of that, identify your 3 other projects. So you've got 3 stakeholders, now 3 projects. Some of them have overlap, some of them may not, but these are the priorities that I have to do for the remainder of the quarter or for the year. Identify all of that. And now they become top center on your radar. You need to write them down. You need to identify them. Everything outside of that, even if it's an email from the president, if it's not in your, if it's that president isn't your stakeholder, it's not relevant. If it is your stakeholder, that's a whole different conversation, because that now is something that matters to you and you're at that level of the business where you have to have those impacts. You're already involved in those conversations. But it really comes down to what's important and identifying and making that list. So that's what I go through with my students, and make sure they are aware. And majority of the time, they have to think really hard. They don't even know who their stakeholders are. And once they've got that list, it's when it makes things easier.
I was literally thinking about that myself. Well, who would I put on that list?
It's becoming a business therapy session here.
That's a really interesting exercise, though. The fact that I couldn't quickly in my mind do it.
Majority of the people don't, Darren.
Yeah.
Majority of the people are just like, I'll put my boss, and yes, put your boss there because that person can fire you. That boss better be there. And what that means is we set up rules and we set up things and parameters within the Outlook framework so that you never miss an email or communication from that individual.
Yeah.
That's essentially the goal. Now it could be 10 p.m. at night. If I've decided to look at my phone, if it's not one of my stakeholders, I don't care. I put it aside. I'll deal with it tomorrow.
Yeah. By the way, you're the only one on my list right now.
Yeah. So I'm so flattered.
I have to think of the rest, but
yeah. So, well, we won't go into the chatter that exists just between, respectively, between Darren and I at all sorts of times throughout the day and evening, trying to get things done. But where this conversation is going, TJ, is let's just say you had those 3 top priorities or people that you want to be responsive to. I feel that when does a person set the right boundaries or context? Because all 3 are important. All 3 want things done. And in the business where, Microsoft has its clients or customers and things of that nature, in the same business perhaps we're in, we march to the tune of our clients and customers. And maybe this is a balance that to even say, okay, we don't have to commit to everything by end of day today or tomorrow or end of week. But it's that fear of, okay, well, we don't want to lose out our value with that individual or a stakeholder, or whether it's your boss or a client, whatever it might be. So how do you balance the expectations realistically, right? Versus just taking on the world, which is what quite often Darren and I do, is like, oh, we got to respond to this and we got to take care of it by like end of day tomorrow. We'll work the weekend, we'll work evenings, whatever it might be, where that's just it. And that's a taxing to everything you've just said, right? It's a counter pattern to, being at Zen, in a Zen state for oneself, a state of balance, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. It really comes down to, again, and I'll tell you, in my career, in my 15 years I was at Microsoft, I can probably count on one hand the number of times all of my stakeholders needed something the same day, right? It doesn't happen as frequently as we think it does. The stakeholders that you're working with, when you've identified them, they have their boundaries, they have their times, they have their, communication channels, and it's very rare that you're going to take on 2 or 3 projects that big within the same deadlines and timelines. We just don't do it because we know the capacity is there, there's conflicts, etc. So it makes it easier to deal with everything else. So when there's 20 emails that have just come in and one of them's from your stakeholder, you're not going through all the other 19, you're going through just that one. Makes your life easier. And when you go through the other 19, then it's like, okay, I'll get to it tomorrow or the day after tomorrow or next week. It doesn't really matter. Or you send them a communication saying, hey, I've got your email. I'll get back to you. Something as simple, but you take the time in your calendar, again, that's where you're blocking it, to work on whatever that response needs to be for those individuals, whatever research is, but you've set the expectation. But when it's your stakeholder, I remember one of my clients sent an email, and within, I think, 30 seconds, I called him. And he's like, dude, I haven't even hit send properly yet. Like, how did you even call me so fast? It's because I know exactly what's going on. And then they brought me in, and he's like, you need to teach my team how to do this. And that's the reality of, if I had 20 emails there, I probably wouldn't have seen his email right away, and I would have seen it later on. But for me, it was identified. I know who it's coming in from. That name sticks in my head. Okay, they need something, let's go. Versus trying to decipher through all the emails and communication coming in. And that's where we get hung up on. It's like, I have to respond to everyone equally. No, you don't. Well, the person who just signed you that $1 million contract is probably a little more priority than the guy who's nickeling and diming over that $10,000 contract, right? So we have to really assess what that looks like.
Well, let me double click on that again. This TJ's, you're right. At any given time, at a point, no one's asking for everything at the same time. And a lot of our state is probably self-induced, right? As a result of just working from home, there's more time, and call it everything that we're having. Maybe instant gratification that everybody is so used to. Like, I cleared my inbox, I responded here. It's a different form of like, hey, I ended up at 0, so I have to respond right away, versus taking a pulse check. No, is the world going to end if I don't respond to this today? So that's like one kind of aspect of self-realization and catching that. But by the same token, I often find that clients, while let's say you have 3 important clients and the deadlines may be overlapping, maybe clients have their own agenda where they're driving you to theirs. So you may have a different set of priorities. And let's just say they're all writing $1 million checks, each of them.
Yeah.
And they all want to be demanding at the same time, not for the same deadline, but they're writing your schedule for you. That's where it becomes a little bit challenging. And perhaps as a consultant, and you can appreciate this, is where like, okay, how do we balance how do we set boundaries with our own clients, our own stakeholders? And this could apply to the family as well, right? It's like, okay, sure, I am actually doing this now, so sorry, but I will make myself 100% available there at that point in given time. And I think maybe I'm, solutioning myself here with you, but I feel like this is what, a lot of people that I come across is they let all those boundaries blur. And we're getting at saying, yeah, well, let everyone work to your schedule, provided you are getting to them. Is that what we're saying here at the end of the day?
Yeah, and absolutely, because you want to be the most effective and most efficient for your clients, essentially. You want to deliver them value. I'll give you an example just from today. I had a client of mine that I was supposed to have a coaching session with, and my calendar blew up. I actually, luckily met Gary Vee over the weekend. And so from that, my social media has, exploded a little bit more than normal, and a lot of DMs and messages coming in. that caused my focus to not be there 100% for my client in the preparation and the work I was going to do. I sent them a note and said, listen, my calendar blew up literally today. I want to make sure I'm providing the best value for you. And this is a paying client. Are you good if we push this out till Thursday?
Yeah.
And he came back and said, you know what, I can also use the time. Let's just reconnect next week. The reason I'm sharing that, Satbir, is unless it's a code red with a client, they're usually okay with moving things around. It's usually us who do not want to ask or reach out and say, hey, can we move this around? Unless there's like 30 people in that call or 10 people in that call, and it's going to be hard to get everyone scheduled, different conversation. But if it's a smaller team, smaller group, we have the flexibility, we have the power to say, this time doesn't work for me. Is there a better time?
Yeah.
And if it's not them, then it's whoever else is coming in is conflicting as well. And say, listen, I'm going to be back to back. My focus and attention isn't going to be there. I want to make sure I deliver the best value for you and you have my undivided attention. Are you okay if we move this to a different slot? Most of the time, it's a yes.
Yeah. Well, Darren,
And
well, thanks, TJ. I was going to say, Darren, I'm glad that TJ thought we were important enough to keep this slot today. Yeah. So sorry, I thought I'd inject that there.
No, absolutely.
But we are thankful that you upheld us while your schedule was blowing up.
For our conversation, gentlemen, but if you think about our conversation, the easy conversation we're having, right? There's no deliverables essentially.
Right.
With that client, I had deliverables, and I have set standards for my own self where if I'm not going to deliver to that level, then I'm not going to do it. I'd rather buy that time and do it properly and better the next time. And in this case here, this is a much easier conversation.
Sure.
You guys are not hard on me at all. So you're asking me all the stuff that I've already done and gone through a million times over. So it makes it easier.
Yeah. All right.
Well, we want to make sure that we can direct people to engage with you. If you could take a few minutes, talk about your services, talk about how you prefer to be engaged. That'd be helpful as well, because we want to make sure people understand. Because everything we just talked about, I'm trying to be, we probably all grew up in a time where it's almost a badge of honor to just keep going.
Yeah.
And I want to do this a little bit differently. I want to give this some pause and some thought, because it's really easy to turn around and say, oh, that was really, really riveting. But hey, got to go and just go right back into things. So I do want to give this that pause and that reflection. But I want to turn it over to you. If you could share, how best do we contact TJ, and in what capacity are you willing to work with folks? We want to make sure we promote that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity there, Darren. The way people can get in touch with me, LinkedIn is where I live. If they want the fastest response, LinkedIn is probably the way to do it. They can find me, just search TJ Walia, and I'm pretty much the only TJ Walia that is posting videos and content about this stuff on a daily basis. I'm on Instagram as well, but I'm a lot more active on LinkedIn. And from a services perspective, it's anything that's related to corporate development, organizations who want their teams to be more productive, a boost or a morale boost for a lot of them, strategies on how does the team engage with one another better. Because one of the components I didn't touch on through this conversation, and we didn't touch on rather, is how my peers supported me through that journey. How I leveraged my peers and built that relationship to say, you know what, today isn't a solid day for me. I need someone to cover me, right? Having those conversations, open conversations with my team is essential. So how do you build that trust within the team? So those are areas that we definitely with. And then the tools, AI has been a big component on really saving time on a day-to-day basis. Huge. I'm helping organizations save anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a day, depending on what the tasks they're doing. So imagine what that translates to in a week. So those are the things that we're doing. So team building activities, offsites, lunch and learns. We're doing all of that right now with clients who want to engage.
That's amazing. I feel like we could do a whole nother session on how you're driving the productivity with these teams, like the 2 to 4 hours. aspect is relevant to any team, any organization. So that's amazing, TJ. I've tracked some of your work, obviously online, and this has been a very pleasure to have you on the show. A real pleasure in terms of chatting about something that most people don't take for granted, perhaps, or I wouldn't even say take for granted, but like are not even aware of, self-aware. And so I'm really glad we were able to take the time, understand this domain of, self-awareness that actually creates productivity if you can actually take a step back and reflect. So really appreciate you coming onto the show, and we look forward to having you on again.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Really, it was a great pleasure, and I really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.